Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of mental health struggles, addiction, anxiety, and eating disorders. Our goal is to share real-life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember, this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Radiant Resilience. I have a very special guest today. My dear sister has joined us to talk about her pretty intense fitness journey. At 32 years old, her journey from a collegiate athlete and dancer to confronting personal challenges has been profound. The birth of her first child, Landon, 11 years ago, marked the beginning of her struggle with her weight. This battle intensified after welcoming her second child, Kyla, leading her to a point where she felt she had lost control. In 2023, she made a pivotal decision to reclaim her life, tackling her issues with alcohol and unhealthy eating head on. Within 11 months, she embarked on a transformative journey that not only saw her shed 70 pounds, but also led her to step on stage for the first bodybuilding competition that she's ever done. This experience was not just about physical change, it was a deep personal revolution that challenged her to face her vulnerabilities and emerge stronger. So, without further ado, sister, where would you like to start?
Oh, I don't know. I guess the beginning, right?
Do you want to start with what inspired you to pursue the figure competition to begin with?
Yeah, so I guess that piece is something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. As you mentioned, I was a dancer my whole life and an athlete in college. I pursued dance as a career until I got pregnant with Landon. I was 19 at the time, a few weeks before my 20th birthday. So I was really stopped that whole plan short, and I picked a new career, and ever since then I've had a longing to have some type of like athleticism back in my life. And I didn't ever really feel like I could go back to dance, and so fitness was something that became a passion for me throughout the years. And so I started learning about bodybuilding and following bodybuilders on social media, and so it was something that sparked kind of a passion in me a few years ago. But because of my weight struggles, I never really tackled it head on until 2023, when I started to lose a decent amount of weight and finally felt like it was something I could actually do.
What did that process look like then? Give us like an overview of that process and then we'll go deeper.
Like how it all started just with the bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So in 2023, in the beginning of it, I was just in a really rock bottom place in my life, in my marriage. There was just a lot going on. And so I just was like, okay, I'm tired of my own shit. The first thing that I had to self-reflect on and change was my struggles with addiction, which for me was food and alcohol.
Okay.
And so it started as like one thing at a time. I had fought weight loss for years, ever since I had Landon, and I gained and lost the same 30 pounds over and over and over again, because I wasn't actually tackling what was causing me to struggle with those things. So I would go all in on fitness and start myself and go to the gym and do all these things, but it wasn't sustainable. And this time I said, let's start with the number one thing that I felt was keeping me from reaching any of those goals. And the first thing was alcohol. I felt like if I didn't struggle with that, it would fix my weight issues, it would fix my financial issues, it would fix my marital issues. And so I just woke up one day and was like, I don't want to drink anymore, at least right now.
Okay. So it got to that point where it wasn't like a necessarily a gradual thing. It was
No,
more of just
it
like
was
a
a
one
hard
day,
stop.
it was like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that was February 5th, 2023. I took about 30 days just to focus on that.
Okay.
But with that, it's a trickle effect. Like it was easier for me to make better food choices.
Okay.
Then you get what they call sober boredom, where you start wanting to do projects and you start wanting to, okay, I want to go for a walk. I want to get back in the gym. I want to do these things. And then I started slowly incorporating fitness. Then I slowly started to incorporate my food choices, tracking my food, following specific diets that worked for me. So from February was just alcohol sobriety focused. March and April, I had basically 60 straight days of additional sobriety. And then I hit a step goal, 10,000 steps. I had a workout plan I was doing. I had a water plan. I had a food plan. And I held myself accountable to those things and just built up more goals. And at that point, I had lost about like 30, 35 pounds.
And all of that, obviously, I know some of this story because I was around for a lot of it, but like all of that you were doing on your own, right? Like you didn't have a trainer, you didn't have anybody telling you what to do. So like, I know that it's a big passion of yours. So was it something you were researching and then figuring it all out, or how were you coming up with that information?
I had, if you name it to lose weight, I've tried it. I knew what to do. Like I've used coaches in the past. I've tried a bunch of different diets. So I knew what worked for my body. Like I knew how much water I should be drinking. I knew how much protein I should be eating. I used at-home workouts. I used Beachbody a lot in the beginning. So I would follow my workouts that way. I wasn't in the gym on my own right away. And so that's what guided me through that. And I think this time was different because I had to prove to myself that I could do it with nobody else.
Okay.
Where before I'd be like, well, if I pay this coach $2,000 for 6 months or whatever, like then I'll have accountability and then I'll feel like I can do it. And that didn't work for me in the past. And it really added more pressure because if I missed a day, I felt like I would want to hide from that person. And the other thing I did too was I didn't use the scale for a decent amount of time because I knew that was triggering for me. So if the scale didn't say what I wanted in the past, I'd be like, I'm doing this for no reason. And it would make me want to give up. So those things were, when I've used coaches in the past, you're supposed to weigh every day because how are they supposed to gauge how you're doing? So I had to tackle a lot of that on my own mentally, figure out what worked for me.
Can we unpack that a little bit more? The scale trigger of that, because I think a lot of people that are struggling with weight, I'm sure we've known a lot of people that just weigh themselves every day, every second of every day. If you do go on these journeys, you get a little bit overly obsessed with that. What do you think helped you get past that? What did you stop weighing yourself? Were you telling yourself things? What was that?
It's different. I think it's different for everybody and depending on your goals, because sometimes it is really vital to know what your weight is and how your body responds to things. For me, I just knew I was doing what I was supposed to do. So what I was doing in the beginning, I weighed once a month. So instead of the daily like up and down, even though you'd see a gradual drop, the up and down is what messes with me and most people.
And isn't it varying based on the time of day that you weigh yourself sometimes too? If you're retaining water at a certain time of day,
it can be what you ate the day before if you had something more like sodium focused. And another thing that I learned too is if you do a really heavy workout and you're sore, your muscles hold on to water. So you could kill yourself in the gym and be like, you feel great in the morning, you step on the scale, you could be up 3 or 4 pounds.
Oh, wow. So that's the mind fuck.
Yeah, 100%.
When your main goal is to lose the weight.
Right. And then you're like, I'm sore and I pushed and I did all these things and I did everything right and I'm starving and I'm this and then, but that's just how it works. And I know that now, but I knew at the time, then I would weigh at the end of the month and I'd have a 10-pound loss. And that was more beneficial for me in the beginning because it wasn't this daily, like, I would get up in the past and weigh myself and it didn't say what I wanted it to say. It would ruin my whole day. I'd cry.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, that can be super triggering because that's really the telltale,
Yeah.
right? But also, isn't there something to be said? My understanding of some of this stuff too is that muscle weighs more than fat too. So when you are gaining more muscle, sometimes that number can either stay the same or go up. But I think that probably messes with people's heads too.
And I've learned that now. It's taken me years of working out and losing weight and gaining weight and all these things to learn. I've lost a lot of weight in the past. And I know what my weight was then, and then what my weight was in prep. For instance, I'm really tall, so we can just talk numbers. Like, I'm 5'10", so I'm not 120 pounds. I never will be. But for instance, like my stage weight, I was about 140 pounds to step on a bodybuilding. So that's lean for me. So in the past, I've been 160 pounds and felt like I was too heavy because I had a number in my mind. But when I was on 160 pounds in prep and I was lifting heavy and I was doing my cardio and I was eating super clean, I looked like a completely different person. So then I learned the number. You say it all the time, and until you really learn your body at 160 because you are overweight and you have no muscle, 160 because you lost weight and you think you feel good but you don't have any muscle. Or 160 when you're lean, you don't have a lot of fat and you do have more muscle than normal. Those are three completely different physiques.
For sure.
And so I've had to learn that the hard way. But it's just different for everybody.
But that's also so interesting because that just goes to show you that everybody's body is different. And especially even what society tells us your weight should be or how you should look or whatever. That's not necessarily, we all shouldn't be striving for that 120 pounds or whatever. But if you're like 5 feet tall, maybe.
And for me, the leanest I've ever been was when I was in college and I was studying ballet. I was 130 pounds then, which was very skinny for somebody my height. And so I've always had that number in my head. It was like, that was the leanest I ever was. And I was confident then. And I was 20 years old. And so I had that number. But then if you would have told me that I would step on a bodybuilding stage at 140, 145, I would have been like, no, I'm not lean enough. But I didn't have the muscle then. I was just a string bean. So that's the other thing you have to learn about bodybuilding is you can't be scared of food. You can't, you can't grow muscle unless you eat. So, and we can probably get into that more later, but there is a building phase that's uncomfortable that comes along with that before you go into a cut, because if you can't hold on to muscle, then what's the point?
For sure. Okay, where were we? We were, before we went on a tangent. So you were at like the point where you had started doing your own workouts and your own food and all of that.
So I did that February through April. And so then I was like, I feel like I can compete. Like I've already pushed myself to probably going to the gym close to twice a day. I would do a lift and then I would do a cardio session. I was hitting my water goals. I was hitting my food goals. And so I was like, I mentally feel like this is something that I could tackle this year. So I started doing a lot of research and then I found my coach.
Pause right there though, because you had started this process before.
I've started it 2 times before.
2 times before this. So this was the 3rd time. Okay. So you had done the research and stuff before a little bit. And I think you even hired a coach once before.
I've hired 2 coaches before. And both of them were used with the end goal for me was like, I want to compete. But at the time, I had 70 pounds to lose, if not more than that, depending on, you talked to. And so I would start with a coach and they'd be like, okay, this is probably a minimum of 2 years of work, because you can't just jump into prep and lose that much weight. And in bodybuilding, you have building phases and cutting phases. So you should do multiple rounds of those. Where you're building up your calories and then you're cutting them down to lean out. And then you're building up your calories and building your muscle and you're leaning them down. So you should have multiple cycles of that. You don't want to just completely diet the entire time because it'll wreck your hormones. It'll take away your muscle. So and so I had to just do that work on my own. And with a coach, it was just like I never got past. It was like so daunting. Of
Yeah.
like we have so far to go before I could even
I mean, 2 years, that would be a long 2 years, I feel like.
Yeah, so my second coach, she's a professional bodybuilder and she was great, but like when we talked and we assessed what my physical stature was,
Mhm.
she was like, it would be at least a year.
Okay.
But she pushed for a year and a half. So like the 1 year of just losing weight
Mhm.
and then 6 months of prep.
Okay.
Because usually they say with people who are competing for the first time, it should be a minimum of 20 to 24 weeks
Oh, okay.
for your first prep.
Okay.
And then I would just end up like, this is too hard.
Overwhelmed.
I have too much weight to lose. I don't, yeah. And then I would end up just, you're wasting your money if you're not
Sure.
committed to it too. It's not cheap.
Yeah, none of this stuff.
It's not a
As you've
sport.
said, you've done it multiple times and you've done all the diet things, and we all know they're not cheap. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And then the coach I had before her just wasn't a good fit for me.
Okay.
And I think it was me too,
Mhm.
but it was just like, it wasn't a really good fit. And all coaches are, everyone in the fitness world thinks they can coach now.
Oh.
And it's a huge online business. A lot of people I know, they've competed before. And so they're like, I'm going to start an online coaching business.
That's a really popular thing right now because in the
Yeah.
hair industry, it's very popular too. The people that I work with, I feel are pretty knowledgeable about it, but there are a lot of, and I get advertisements on Instagram all the time for want to boost your Instagram account? I'll coach you how. Everyone thinks they're an expert in everything now.
Yeah.
So.
And now that the fitness world is so much online, and
Right.
all you really have to do is write somebody's workouts and give them their macros. You're not training them in the gym. So everyone thinks they can do it. And every coach I've worked with has had a completely different approach.
Okay.
And it just depends on how big their business is.
Mhm.
So the first person I worked with, I just felt like it wasn't like very tailored to what I needed, and it just trickled off. The second coach I worked with, she was amazing, but she was part of a huge brand
Okay.
of bodybuilders. That company is one of the best in the world. And so I just felt so like I wasn't a professional bodybuilder already. I had never competed before. I didn't even know where to start. And I was so intimidated by everyone else who used them as coaches because those were already athletes.
Yeah.
And doing this as a profession or doing it multiple times a year. This was what they did. And I just felt overwhelmed by that group.
Yeah. So they didn't have a lot of beginners, basically.
No, and she knew what she was doing. But for me, I wanted something smaller.
Okay.
And more personalized.
Okay.
And so that's when I found my coach. His name is Justin. And their coaching group is called Alinea Coaching, and they're local to Colorado. So that was the biggest thing for me. They're out of Fort Collins, Windsor.
Okay.
And so you need to do face to face. So they, for instance, his wife is a professional bodybuilder and so is he.
Okay.
And they do in-person posing classes.
Oh, that's helpful too.
And so usually that's in a separate thing that you'd have to pay for. Hire another online coach to teach you all of that. And so that was all free. So towards the end or middle of my prep, I would drive down to Fort Collins and I could get one-on-one coaching sessions with them, which is huge. Because if you're just using someone online, it's like not that helpful.
Yeah.
They tweak you and everything is in.
Yeah, that seems like something that would be better as a in-person thing.
Yeah. And then their platform, they had an app, which I hadn't had before. Everyone else used spreadsheets.
Oh.
All my workouts were on there. I could log how much I was lifting, how long it took me to do the workouts, how hard they were. I logged all my cardio. All my food was in there. He wrote my meal plan for me.
Nice.
Yeah, there's videos in there of, oh, I don't know what this exercise is. Here, watch the video.
That's cool.
My check-ins were all in there.
Okay.
My photos, my progress. And then we were able to pick a local show to Colorado where they walked me through the whole thing and we went together, where a lot of other online coaches who are out of state, you're going to go to your show all by yourself.
Or could you like fly them
or
in?
Or you fly somewhere else.
Oh,
which
okay. That's a whole
I already spent thousands of dollars just doing a local show.
Yeah.
That flying somewhere is just, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like maybe now because I've done one, but there's so much that goes into it that I wanted someone here.
Yeah.
And the other thing about them is they're really focused on your mental health. They want to know, how are you doing? How are your relationships? How is your sleep? How is your stress? How is work? Because if none of those things are in line, your body's not going to respond either.
It's all very important to the overall health of your body. And okay, so you hire them. And when did you do that?
So that was in the beginning of May.
Okay.
And May, he obviously hadn't worked with me before. And I said, I want to compete in the fall.
Oh.
And he was like, okay. And I said, I've lost 35 pounds by myself. I'm in a regimen. I'm disciplined. I'm consistent. I feel like I can do it. And he was like, okay. So he didn't say I could compete.
Mhm.
He just said, let's work together in May
Okay.
and follow the plan and let me see how you do. Let me see how your body responds. Let me see.
So it's like a trial period, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I had to do blood work
Mhm.
because if your hormones are out of whack, I also stopped birth control that month.
Ooh.
So he was like, let's see what that looks like.
Yeah.
That can like wreck things. And we worked together all of May. And then I did my blood work, looked fine. That went fine. And then I went on vacation the end of May and like totally fell off track.
Oh no.
I think I worked out one day and then I started drinking again around that time. We ate all the food.
And that's probably pretty common. I think we all go on vacation and we're in fuck it mode, and
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna, I
You
don't know,
wanna
I'm gonna eat
relax. You
everything,
don't
I'm gonna
think
drink
about
everything, I'm
Right.
gonna, yeah. So I think that's
Yeah.
common.
And he told me too, he was like, we're not in prep. This is lifestyle, right? Like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
do if you go on vacation. Like, I
Okay.
was doing it to myself, but I felt like I had just already given up.
Mhm.
And so we had to check in and I was like, I think we both know that I'm not ready to compete. And I was like, let's maybe look at spring and like, what do we need to do to get there? And I felt super overwhelmed by the process. And I was like, basically just giving up on my own.
Mhm.
And he was like, okay, stop. Who said that you weren't ready?
Yeah.
Who said I never said that. Reel it back in. Why do you think that? What's going on? Let's pick apart what you're doing to yourself in your mind.
Mhm. Because a lot of this journey is very mental as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So
90% of it is.
right. So you get in your head that you had one off week and you messed everything up, and that's the end.
And if I couldn't do it right now and it was vacation, then like how was I gonna do 6 to 5 months of prep with no messing up when it is really serious?
Yeah.
And so I remember us going back and forth after my check-in. And he was like, okay, how about, he said the Rocky, which was the show that I did, the NPC Rocky, it was November 18th. And this was like at the end of June that we were having this conversation.
Mhm.
And he was like, the Rocky's in 19 weeks.
Ooh, you say the end of June and then you say November. And
Yeah.
that seems so far away, like
When
such
you
a big
think in months.
But then when you say 19 weeks,
Mhm.
that's really not that
doesn't-
long.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's 19 weeks. Let's hit the ground running. And that's our show.
Mhm.
And then I was like, no, I'm not ready. And I was like, okay. And he was like, if you want to do it, I think that you're in a place like I can get you there
Mhm.
and we can do it if you are ready and you stop doing what you're doing to yourself mentally right now. He was like, I never thought that you couldn't do a show in the fall. So
Okay.
it's the last show of the season.
Mhm. What is the season usually?
So it just started right now. It's usually starts around the spring. There are shows in the beginning of the year, but they're very professional. So like the Arnold, I think was in February, but
Okay.
those are like
Big
Olympians and people who do this year round. So
Okay.
for most people, they probably started prep at the beginning of 2024 and shows are just now starting now. So I would say usually April through November
Okay.
is a season,
standard.
depending
Okay.
on who you are. There are shows all the time in all the states, but yeah, they usually stop right around Christmas,
Okay.
winter holidays.
Okay, so you have 19 weeks.
Yeah.
So is that when you guys started getting serious then about prep?
Yeah, so he basically redid all my protocols. My lifts stayed the same 90% of the time. For bikinis, the division I did,
Mhm.
every division has a different shape focus. So your workouts are going to be tailored to that. So for bikini, it's shoulders, glutes, basically shoulders and glutes. And then everything else is pretty lean.
Okay.
So mine consisted of my glutes needed a lot of help. So even from the beginning, I did 3 to 4 glute days.
And what does that mean? Like basically your glute, you didn't have the muscle tone there?
Yeah,
Okay.
that shape, that muscle that they're looking for. They're looking for a shape when you go to,
Okay.
but you don't want big legs. So
Okay.
it wasn't, I never did quads.
Okay.
It was hamstrings and glute focused were most of my leg days.
Mhm.
And then I had a shoulder day and then a back day.
Okay.
I never did biceps. I never did they're just specific things just
Okay.
to make that bikini shape. And then we started out cardio small, 25 minutes 5 days a week. Steady state is what they call it. So you're basically fast walking. I have a treadmill at home, so I just use that most of the time. And then as it goes on, your workouts, eventually I ended up 7 days a week working out when I started at 5.
Okay.
So then your workouts go up, your cardio goes up, and your food continuously goes down.
Okay. And that's in calories, right? Basically, or amount or
macros, calories, yes, you have to just be in a deficit, but I was on a meal plan.
okay.
So some coaches do macros where you can set your own food. My coach gave me all of my food and told me exactly what to eat and what portions the entire time. So I ate the same foods the entire time, but instead of in the beginning, I was allowed to have a lot of red meat.
Okay.
And then towards the end, I was only eating chicken.
More lean.
And then I would have 200 grams of potatoes in the beginning. And then towards the end, I was allowed like 100 grams of potatoes. So my food stayed the same. It would just, the portions would get smaller.
Okay, so talk about that. So you've already told us like what the beginning part was. So then let's fast forward really quick and just set as a comparison, what was, you've already said what your food differences were, but how did your workouts change as you got like way closer to the show?
So I would say about 6 weeks out
from the show,
we went balls to the wall.
Right. You were, because I remember you were getting up like super early in the morning and you were working out before and after work and all weekend long.
So the last 6 weeks were the hardest. So I would get up at 5 a.m. I would go to the gym. My lifts were about an hour, and then I'd have an hour of cardio. So those last 6 weeks, I had 2 hours of cardio a day. I had to split them in half because I just didn't have the capability unless I just didn't sleep, and sleep's important too.
Right.
So I would do an hour lift at the gym, and then I would do an hour of cardio. Towards the very end, it was of like steady state cardio, and then an hour of high intensity interval cardio.
Okay.
So I would do my high intensity in the morning after my lift. So I'd do my lift, and then I would just do sprints. So walk for a minute, run for a minute, walk for a minute, run for a minute for 15 minutes.
Oh man.
And so that was my morning routine. I'd go home, get my kids ready for school, get ready for work. I was like hybrid at the time, so I didn't have to go to work every single day, but the days that I did, I'd have to have all my food ready to go, like prepped, everything, bring my food with me, my gallons of water, and then I would come home after work, and then I would just put on a weighted vest and turn the TV on in the garage and do another hour of just walking.
Okay.
And then make dinner and
all the things
and do it all over again. And then you have a bunch of supplements and everything that like goes into that too. So I was constantly just carrying around like my backpack of vitamins and protein powder and
your prep meals and your
so that was my protocol, and my workouts were 7 days a week, so I didn't have a single rest day. One of those days was just cardio, but still, when you're talking 2 hours of cardio,
that's not a rest day.
No. And so it was grueling, and then I ended up injuring myself 3 weeks before my show. I was just running, and I think what I did was partially tear my hip flexor. But I was running on the treadmill and like almost collapsed.
Oh geez.
When my leg just stopped working.
Oh my gosh.
And I limped for probably 2 months after my show.
Oh wow.
So after that, I ended up just having to use the elliptical. I didn't put any pressure on it whatsoever.
Oh man.
So we had to dial it back for a few days. I couldn't work out.
That's so stressful too.
Yeah. So I was just like rolling it and doing hot like Epsom baths, and so that was a little bit of a nightmare. But we were pushing so hard that my body was like, something was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Which isn't ideal, but
so I feel like we've gotten the brief overview of all of that stuff, and I want to get into the emotions and all of the post show, but first, okay, you've given us an overview of the process. Talk about some of your difficult times, darkest times. You started out cutting out alcohol, and that was, I'm sure, its own journey. So talk about some of that stuff, like the emotions behind a lot of it.
So I think for me, If I look back, it was a very lonely process.
Mm.
And there's two sides of that I've heard from people who are athletes or people who are bodybuilders, where I've heard people say, don't compete unless you have the support of the people around you.
Okay, and that is that mostly like close immediate family? Is that
Your
like
direct family, the people, your husbands, your children, your wives, the people, they are impacted by the commitment and sacrifice that it takes to step on stage. I didn't quite grasp that.
Which probably with like most things you don't grasp it.
No, you're in it, yeah. But then like when I talked to my coach about it, I also felt like if I waited till everybody else was ready, I was never gonna do it.
Yeah.
And he supported my mindset in that.
Okay.
Because I said to him from the very beginning, my husband was never very fond of the idea. He didn't understand it.
Sure.
He was like, sure, get fit and go to the gym and eat salad, and that's great. Go on a walk, but he was like, what is this bodybuilding thing?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't understand it. And so I talked to Justin about it from the very beginning, because there's also a very large cost that comes with all of this. The coaching isn't cheap. None of it's cheap.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a conversation with your partner of, hey, I want to do this, and here's what it's going to take, and here's what it's going to cost. And I knew from the beginning, and it's not anything against him. Like, he has the right to be like, that's a lot, and why would we do that? And why is that worth spending our money on? Like, that's just a conversation that anyone has to have, no matter what type of investment that you're making in something. And so Justin did a really good job of coaching me through that. He was like, a lot of relationships go through this if they're not really in it together, or you're not both bodybuilders, or you're not both. And so that was probably the biggest thing, was he never really understood why I was doing it. And he had resentment towards the amount of time that I took from him and from the kids. Like, towards the end, I just told him, like, you have to take the kids to school every day because I'm at the gym. Like, I need you to get them up, and not necessarily take them to school. Like, we shared that, but I wasn't home in time to wake them up. So he had to get up and he had to make them breakfast, and he had to do, and then he had to sometimes make dinner while I was outside on the treadmill, and I couldn't go out to eat anymore, and I couldn't go do these things, and you can't really drink on prep either. And he was like, he felt lonely, and he felt like what he would explain to me was that, like, he lost his best friend, and I was doing my thing and he was doing his. And so we definitely had a disconnect during the whole process. And he was like, when is this going to be over?
Would you say that was from like February to November, or more like the June to November timeframe?
I think that we had a disconnect about a lot of that the entire year, which we worked through a lot of that in the point that we are right now. But then with prep, especially the last 6 weeks, that had to be my number one focus, whether he liked it or not. And that might not be a nice thing to say.
This was a goal you were working towards.
Like, that just is what it was important. And I was going to be the one stepping on stage. So if you're not ready, when you're not giving it everything that you can give it, then what's the point? Like, you didn't put all that work in just to waste your time. And so that was probably the hardest part. Was our relationship was just like, I think we had resentment towards each other because I wanted him to support me more. And he wanted me to be around more. And I also think too that he went through a transition in the beginning of last year where he stepped away from his job and he struggled with his career. So I think he was going through a path of, he felt really lost of who he was. And I was going through this like revolutionary thing of finding myself.
Okay, so you were like, I was about to say, really, you guys were both going through some self-discovery, just it seems on different levels of it. So he was maybe in the earlier stages of it, and you were a little bit further along. And that's hard for somebody who's trying to realize that stuff. So.
He was in like a defeated stage, and I was in like
fired up stage.
And so I think that's what caused it, but that was probably the hardest part. And then it's just managing, like, your friends come to town. At the end of the day, like, not everybody can do the sport.
For sure.
I did it once. I've told people I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but like, people don't get it, and that's okay. But it's not, people don't like the person that can't go out to the bars. And it's not that they don't like them, but it's like,
You're boring.
Yeah, you're boring. Or
Mhm.
they think, I've had people say it comes across almost like you think that you're better than
Oh,
people because
really?
you're like, I can't drink that and I can't eat that and I can't do this and I can't do that because I have to go to the gym. And it comes across like this because you're eating that or because you're drinking that. And I'm like, but that's not your goal. It's my goal.
Right.
And I would say that to my husband too. He would be like, I feel like because you're not drinking, that you judge me if I'm having a drink. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Does it make it difficult for me sometimes?
Sure.
But that's on me. I didn't ask anyone else. And my coach would say that to me all the time. You asked for this. No one said you had to prep. No one said you had to be a bodybuilder. Nobody said you had to do any of these things. You chose it.
Okay.
So you don't get to complain. You don't get to, you don't,
This
right?
is his pep talk.
It's true though. That's just in the community is you chose
Yeah.
to put yourself through this and pick this sport. No,
Yeah.
you didn't just end up on Survivor one day and here you are. Like,
Yeah.
no one's making you do it. And you can quit anytime that you want. And so that's the thing you have to realize is everyone else around you, they can drink around you, they can eat. And I went to tons of events and like showers or whatever. We'd go to the pool and my best friend came into town and like it's hard. And it's but especially with the food. Like I think there's a lot of people who are sober in life, but they can go out and have a good time and all you're worried about is, oh, I'm just not gonna have a drink tonight.
Right.
When I'm like, oh, I literally showed up with my chicken and rice.
Yeah.
It gets a little weird. So I think I did shut myself off a little bit because it was easier for me to just hide and stay focused.
Okay.
And everyone I've talked to, I have a lot of like people that I met in the industry or who were also like part of my coach's community. Some people were like, no, I can totally go to events and bring my own food and it doesn't bother me.
Are these people that have done it multiple times though? Maybe if you're doing this more often and you're like, it just becomes normal to you. Like you're the girl that shows up with your chicken and rice. Like you're just like.
Because they've already established themselves
right.
as that and people just accept it.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe that is why it's easier. Because it is hard to like explain it to people.
Yeah.
And so even towards the end, I would go to things and people would be like, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. Like, how'd you do it? And I'd be like,
where do I?
But it was easier. But then it's awkward because I guess my original point was like, do I want to go into it? Do I want to be like, I'm doing a show? And sometimes I would just be like, oh, I've just been really like watching my food and like going to the gym because sometimes I didn't want to explain it.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
it would feel embarrassing or
Especially if it was somebody that you didn't know as well or whatever.
or there was always this thought in my mind of what if I actually don't make it to the stage? And then I told all these people I was going to do it. And then what if I'm not ready? Or it happens to people all the time. They'll pull out or they'll pick a different show or they get injured or some people just are like, this isn't my time. I've seen tons of people, even professional bodybuilders that pull out and they're like, my mental state is not okay. My body's not ready. My body's not responding. So I'm not going to do it. And that's always a possibility.
Sure.
So I was always scared to be super open about it. I have 2 Instagrams. I have a personal Instagram and I have a fitness Instagram. So I was very open about it on my fitness Instagram because everyone was supportive and most of the people I don't know in real life. So like it is what it is. I didn't say anything about it on my personal Instagram until it was peak week, which is the week before your show. Yeah. Which is you're gonna go. Yeah. So like most people had no idea that I was even doing it unless you were like related to me or my best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, but those are some intense emotions too, to be like, what if I don't make it?
Yeah.
What if I don't do it? I guess that's probably a little bit of, I don't know if that's a similar to imposter syndrome or whatever, but that self-doubt of.
I had multiple mental breakdowns throughout the process.
Talk about the mental breakdown.
Because I just felt, number one, I would hear people say all the time in the bodybuilding world, don't compare yourself to others.
That's a really good lesson to learn
in life.
Because I mean, I've struggled with that with my infertility stuff too, like comparing
your journey.
Yeah, my journey to someone else's journey, or even just the people who have been able to have babies seemingly easy. You're like, what the fuck? Why can't, but they say comparison is like one of your worst enemies.
Yeah, I never was like, as far as bodybuilding went, everybody looks amazing to me. So I was like, I didn't think that was going to be an issue. I knew people who'd go find other bodybuilders that were going to be in their show And I'm like, how would you even know that? Like, where would you even need to start? Because I was so new to it. I think if you're a professional, there's familiar names. But unfortunately, like when I started, so within our coaching group, our Alinea coaching group, they immediately connect you with everybody else who's part of using your same coach.
Okay.
We're a family, we're a community. If you're local to Colorado, we work out together, we do posing class together, we do group calls. And so I connected with another athlete, but was quite a bit older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And we started prep about the same time. So her show was 2 weeks before mine.
Mm-hmm.
So she started prep a little bit before me, but we had connected. And I remember looking at her Instagram, and she looked incredible at the start of prep.
Ah, yes.
And I was like, I remember telling Justin, I don't look like that. Like we're starting prep, we're doing similar shows within the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
She had the shape, she had the tone. And I was like, I don't have that shape, I don't have the tone, I had a decent amount of weight to lose.
Yeah.
And he was like, stop doing that. Like, she looks like her, you look like you, she has a journey, you have a journey, like stop.
But that's so hard. There was a part of me that as I watched you go through this journey and then watching the show, obviously, there was a part of me that was like, they need to take into account where these people start and came from.
That's
And
true.
because your journey, again, I don't want to downplay other people's prep.
Sure.
But if you're starting like me,
yeah,
and you're doing prep versus somebody who needs to lose 70 pounds or 60 pounds before they even start prep. Those are two very different journeys. And then to put them both on stage together and compare them.
There's different divisions. So like I did do a novice and first time competitor division, which keeps you obviously away from the professionals. But the thing about like novice, for instance, is as long as you haven't competed more than 3 years, you can be novice.
Okay.
So you could be training for 3 years, done multiple shows, like multiple building stages, possible like steroids, like performance enhancing things. Like I did this one time for 6 months. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I wasn't a lean person when I started. And so I compared myself to her, and I were very close throughout the process. We talked almost on a daily basis the entire time of prep, but she looked insane. We did not step on the stage, like her veins and her six pack, like she just looked like what a bodybuilder should look like. And I didn't look like that. And she was a decent amount older. And I don't want to put an age on her because I don't actually know how old she was, but she has grown children. Yeah. So I would say maybe 50s. And I would constantly just tell Justin, like, I'm not ready. Like, I don't look like that. And so I had all these people, and then I started finding people who were going to go to my show and that I was connecting with on Instagram, and I don't look like that girl and I'm not lean enough. And then I remember when my suit came, to custom make your suit, it takes 3 months for your suit to be made.
And this is a bikini for those.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. My bikini suit. And it's very expensive, hundreds of dollars. And they make it not knowing what your shape is going to be.
Okay. Because you have to order it how long in advance? Sorry.
3 months. So 12 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So for like context, I lost in my prep 40 pounds in 4 months, essentially. Wow. A little over 4 months. So my physique, like you look like a completely different person. And so my suit came, and in my mind, I watched all these people on Instagram when they would get their suit.
Oh, they do like the opening video?
They put it on.
Oh.
And they'd cry. And it was like that moment, right, where it brought it all together. And
like when you find the wedding gown, you like it's
made it. And so I already had this like idea that I was gonna make, and I put it on, and it was way too small. And I was like, that's it. I'm not going.
Oh, no.
I'm not doing this. Like, I felt like I had roll. And that's the other thing too, was giving birth twice. And with both of those pregnancies, I gained 50 pounds each. I have stretch marks. I have loose skin. That's just my body. And also by the time I stepped on stage, I'd lost 70 pounds. Like that's what bodies do, right? Like I'm not going to be like ripped and tight like everybody else, because I was so overweight before. And so I just could see my rolls, and I could see these things. And I like took my suit off and I went downstairs to my husband and I just started bawling. And I was like,
Oh.
I'm not ready. I can't do it. And he was like, okay, let's talk about this. Are you really not ready? He's like, this is supposed to not be miserable.
Yeah.
So if this is miserable, and and it's hard because it's not supposed to be fun either, but
Well, to some degree, maybe, but yeah.
I called Justin and I was like, I'm not ready. And I got my suit
So how many
on.
times at this point had you told him that you weren't gonna do it?
That
You
I
weren't
had called
ready?
him crying. Yeah, like so many. But he was like so good about it. And like his
Yeah.
wife was really good about it. And like they
Mhm.
just had to constantly talk me off a ledge.
Mhm.
And so you ended up coming over
Yes.
and sewing my suit. I like called the lady that made it because she was in a different state. So there
Mhm.
wasn't time for me to send it back. And so she was like, here's how you can fix it on your own.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't know how to sew.
Yeah. So I came over and we had a sewing party.
Yeah, so you came over and you helped me sew my suit and we like fixed it so that it fit better. And then like through peak week, which is the week before your show, is very drastic protocols.
Mhm.
I was taking diuretics, which basically make you lose a lot of water weight and stuff. So that's what Justin was like. There's a lot that's going to happen in these next 3 weeks. So even if it feels tight or whatever. So it ended up like being mostly okay. But yeah, through the entire thing, I remember the first like mental breakdown I had to him was I went to Arizona
Mhm.
with mom
Mhm.
and I came back from that really stressed out. That's a thing for another day.
Yeah.
And I ended up like having a binge eating moment. Same thing, called him. I was like, I ruined the whole thing. We're only like 3 weeks into prep. And he was like, okay. But he told me that time, he was like, this is going to be the first of many roadblocks, emotional breakdowns, like physical, mental. Like, he was like, this is prep.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, I thought everyone was perfect. Like, I just thought everyone, like, these were disciplined people and they never had an off meal and they never ate too much and they never skipped a training session.
And that's part of a lot of other things too in life. Everybody makes the journey look like it's easy and great and fun. And then when you do the comparison game, you're like, but it's not like that for me. So what am I doing wrong?
Everyone knows that's just a thing within the bodybuilding community too. Like you'll see a lot of people, what everyone else sees is stage day, right?
Yeah.
Show day.
Yeah.
They see the suit, they see your body, they see the hair and the makeup and the heels and the lights. And because that's what we show, right? I don't want to share my pictures of me 225 pounds.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything on my personal Instagram until show day. And then people are like, oh my gosh, how did you? I can't tell you how many people reach out to me from like high school, people I haven't talked to in 10 years, and they're like, how did you do it? And it's a different realm of you do not see the blood, sweat, and tears. And I've said it a million times on my fitness Instagram, not everyone can do it.
Right.
It genuinely takes, and people who do this for a living, I don't. They're psychotic. Like it's just crazy. Like it's a crazy sport. It's very extreme. So that's why it was really difficult when people would ask me, have you lost so much weight? What's your secret? And I'm like, it literally isn't a secret. And I almost didn't want to tell people because it's not healthy.
And it's in a
and
different way.
And it's not sustainable. I don't want you to think because I'm going to the gym for 3 hours every day. And towards the end, I'm only eating 1,200 calories or less. That's what you should be doing.
Right.
Those are extreme things. So a lot of times I would just explain to people the basics of losing weight and even, with the bodybuilding stuff is eat whole foods. Like the foods that I ate when I was on prep, the only processed foods I had the entire time were rice cakes or protein shakes.
Okay.
Other than that, I had eggs, fruit, cheese, I guess cheese is processed, nuts, meat, rice, and potatoes. All of those things come from the ground. Like start there. But I wouldn't tell people like go to the gym 3 hours a day because that doesn't work for everybody.
Sure.
And you don't want to be a bodybuilder or do a bodybuilding show. So I would also encourage people to, when they would ask me, like, find a coach because my coach also did lifestyle. Okay. So you can use coaches all over that. You're like, I don't want to be a bodybuilder,
but I'm
struggling with this and I don't know where to start in the gym and I don't know what to eat and I've gained and lost the same 10 pounds. You can use a coach for a lifestyle too. Don't follow other people's macros. Don't follow other people's gym. Like some people can go to the gym 5 days a week through their whole prep and it works for them because that's their body or their metabolism.
Yeah.
Some people like me could not do that. So it's just different for everybody.
Okay, so we have all the ups and downs of the journey, and
Mhm.
then you get on stage. Talk about that.
Show day was, I was glad to be there, just to get there.
I hope you felt some level of pride doing that, that you made it, especially after all the meltdown.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And you came with me, and we went and spent the night in the hotel, and I had all my food, which is crazy. I just brought Ziploc bags of grilled chicken, hard-boiled eggs, and rice. And then I had the Twix bar I was eventually allowed to have. But at that time, I was drinking 2 gallons of water a day.
Yeah.
Which was crazy too. So like I had all my water and like all these things. So it's just like showing up, you get signed in. Show day is another beast in itself because you have to get your hair done. You have to have your makeup done, which luckily you did my hair. I opted into doing my own makeup. You have to pay for a tan. I opted in doing my own tan, which looking back now, because you were there, I regret that piece now, but I was trying to save money because I'd already spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Sure.
And so I bought my own like professional bodybuilding tanning kit. But you get ready and whatever, and we're practicing, and it feels fine. And then you step backstage and you're around bodybuilders, and everybody looks incredible. And I was very self-conscious the entire time. I remember being backstage, and I was backstage alone.
Yes.
I didn't know anyone. You had to pay over $100 or something for your coach to come backstage with you.
Yeah.
And I opted out of doing that at the time. Again, another regret. Because I just was like so out of money. I was like, I don't know. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll just figure it out. And I was very intimidated backstage.
And they had you back there for a long time.
Yeah. You're back there with every division too.
Yeah.
So even though you're in the beginner one, you're standing next to professional bodybuilders who you're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And I don't think that everyone looks around and judge. That's a lie because you're there for people to judge your body.
Yeah, and you are also in competition with those people around you. Right. Maybe not the advanced people, or maybe not the men versus the women or whatever.
But we're all looking at each other. Yeah. And that's the point of the show is what does your body look like? Basically naked.
Which was also like, as a spectator, was also really interesting to watch, because I feel like society as a whole is trying to get away from the body image stuff.
Yeah.
And so as a spectator, watching these people voluntarily get on stage to be judged about their bodies was just super interesting to sit and watch and comprehend, because I probably was sitting there judging every single person. I'm like, ooh, that one looks better than that one, and then that guy's got bigger.
Oh yeah.
But and then you could, based on how people moved around the stage, you could also tell who'd been doing it for a while and whatever. But it was a weird concept to be around.
Yeah, it's a world within its own.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to it too, like you said. You don't just stand on stage. Every division has posing and routines.
Yeah.
So I had an entire posing routine. Bikini is different than wellness, is different than figure, is different than men's physique. And so you're going up there all by yourself and putting on a show. Then you have to learn how to stand in line and listen to what the judges say, and they'll tell you to turn to the side and front pose and back pose. Like all of these things you have to learn too. It's not just like, okay, here I am and what do I look like?
Yeah.
And some people pose so much better than others. Like you're in these heels. I remember I'd walk and be like, don't fall down.
I mean, I can't walk on heels anymore at all anyway.
And when you're nervous, like we were all shaking. And so you can tell the newbies from like the people who just crush their posing because they're just used to being on stage. But there's also that aspect too of that person may be way too big, right? There's people who are like, ooh, like just depending on what. If you're not used to the bodybuilding world, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And for me, steroids are steroids in the bodybuilding world. Like they're not frowned upon. So some people have feelings about that and some people don't, but it's like you're allowed to use them, and if you don't want to use them you don't have to, but that also like changes. Like there could have been people who did cycles and stood on stage next to me, and I personally didn't do any of that. That'll change it too. But I definitely felt very intimidated the entire time. I was proud of myself for doing it, but I think taking a step back, I think that I needed to build more muscle.
Mm.
I think that's what I was lacking.
Okay.
Compared to some of the other people. I don't feel like my shape was totally there.
But you did it.
But I did it. Yeah.
And okay, so you went up, you did your routine, you did all the things, you were judged, you came back down. How did you feel afterwards? Like right after? Like come off stage.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Good. But it's crazy too, because with how they do these shows, there's two pieces to it. So in the morning, like we got up at like 6 a.m. to get ready. I don't think I stepped on stage till like after 11. That's prejudging. So I felt great after prejudging, but that's not like the lights and the camera part. That's like the boring part in the world of bodybuilding. Then the big show comes at nighttime. So you basically have to figure out what to do with yourself for 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
Not eat too much food, not mess up your tan, not mess up your suit for 8 hours, and you're super sweaty. Because like posing and everything is very difficult, a lot more difficult than it looks. And then you get back on stage for like actual placing. And so I did that. I placed in my first division because they do top 5 and there was 5 of us. My second division, my novice division, there was quite a few of us. I want to say 12. I didn't place in that, which I didn't expect to. And no, I was like glad and happy and proud, but towards the end, you're so exhausted.
Okay. Yeah. Did you feel like relief once it was done?
Yes. Okay. And all my friends came and like family came to watch. And so it was like, it was fun. My first thought was like, where are we going to go eat?
Yeah. What food can I have now? I can have whatever I want now.
And so there was like this huge relief at that point of, okay, we did it and like it's done, which I guess isn't really the best thought. But I think like mixed emotions about it. Like I'm proud that I did it. But I wasn't proud of what I brought to the stage at the end of the day. Okay. But I think that's also just like me being hard on myself too. Yeah. So like people ask me now, are you going to compete again or do you want to? That doesn't even cross my mind. Like I can't even go down that path personally right now. But yeah, sure. That's like my overall takeaway. I wish I felt a little bit more confident in the moment. But again, I lost 70 pounds in 9 months. Yeah. Yeah. When I've told some people about your journey, everybody's like, what? I know. People are like, you lost how much? How much? Yeah. And then I get the same question of, how did she do it? And I'm like, she did. Actually, it was a lot of work. That's usually what I tell people. I don't go into specifics and just like, oh, it was a lot of work. That's a fast amount of time to lose weight. And that was the thing too. I think I spent most of my time in a diet phase, which does eat away at your muscle. Oh, interesting. Okay. So a lot of people, even professional bodybuilders, they'll do my coach I had before I used Justin, she at one point, she almost went to the Olympia, which is the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world. She did 8 shows that year. So that's prep for months. And that's someone who maybe has 15 pounds to lose to be shredded. Okay. Yeah. So to maintain that, a lot of those girls lose their menstrual cycles. Oh, wow. Their hair starts falling out. Your hormones are wrecked. I never got that lean, but you cannot hold on to it. And then they'll take a whole off season where you're building up your calories, you're getting your hormones back. You shouldn't spend so much time in a dieting phase unless you've already established a decent amount of muscle. Yeah. And they say too, like muscle burns fat. So for me, it was like, here's the goal. I want to see, and that was the one thing my coach said to me from the beginning. Why do you want to do it? And it was always like, I just want to see if I can. It was never like, I want to be a bodybuilder. I just wanted to see if I could do it because I knew that it was grueling. I didn't know how, and I did it. And that's what he told me the whole time is that was the goal. The goal wasn't, I want to walk away with first place. I want an overall. I wanted this. It was like, I want to just make it to the stage and we made it to the stage. Yeah. So looking back on it now, this was last November, so it's been a few months, but as you reflect on, let's say from February to November time period, how are you feeling about it? Not just the process and the prep, but the emotional aspect of it and what you went through and the breakdown. And then how are you feeling about it now? So I would say there's two pieces of that, and a lot of people go through this. I didn't think that I would, but I did go through this, but in a different way. A lot of people say after the show, people go into a depression because it's over. And what you're putting yourself through this, but you have a goal.
Right.
You see it, you're getting closer, your body's changing, you look amazing, you're accomplishing these things you never have, and then it's over. And then it's what now? And so I don't do this as a sport, right? So I was like, oh, well, I'm just gonna do it and I'll be fine. And I was ready for a break. What I learned after my show is that I ignored everything that was really going on emotionally with myself, emotionally in my marriage, with my professional life. I focused 100% on prep. And
Okay,
then
so you're saying during the prep, you
during
ignored
all of my weight loss, during my sobriety, during my weight loss, during my prep, it was like, I'm healing. I wasn't healing, I was losing weight, which for me made me feel better.
Sure.
But after the show, it wasn't about the glitz and glamour is over. It was like all the shit that was there when I was rock bottom was still there. And now I actually have to deal with it and pay attention to it. And my marriage was almost in shambles by the end of it. And so my husband was like stoked when it was over, and I was stoked when it was over.
And you're in a different way, I'm sure.
But you can't just go from that extreme to, okay, I'm going to go back to real life.
Right.
Your body can't respond that way. So you're supposed to what they call as a reverse diet. Go after your show, you can have a week of fun or a few days of fun. You're supposed to go right back to your diet, right back to your cardio and lifting, which is already very extreme, and slowly, gradually bring it back. I went from 0 to 100. I couldn't do it. I had gym PTSD.
Oh, no.
My injury was still bothering me. I just wanted like a break. I wanted to go out with my friends. I wanted to go have a drink. I wanted to go on a date with my husband. And so I dove right back into that type of a lifestyle. And what I learned very quickly is my food addiction and my alcohol addiction came spiraling back full force during that time. And then I've spent the last few months like trying to get a grasp over that. And so even though I felt like in the beginning, oh, I was sober for 100 days and I did this, like you have to get to the root cause, right? Like of what's actually like causing those behaviors and like doing those things. And so that was something like I really struggled. I would have check-ins with my coach after my show, and I'd have to fill out my food log and my workout log, and I wasn't going to the gym. And I would lie about it sometimes. I'd be like, I'd put cardio in, but I knew I didn't do that much cardio. But he's not stupid. You can't see it in your body. And so it's just like, then I'm ashamed. And then I had started a new job. And I do accounting. So then it was year end. And then also right after my show, it was Thanksgiving 2 weeks later. And it was Christmas and New Year's. And it was my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just wanted to do all of the things. And I didn't want to stress about it. And I definitely did not. I epically failed at a reverse diet. I used my coach. We reverse dieted out until January. And then I took a break from him just because financially, and I had a lot of things going on in my personal life. But that was like my biggest takeaway afterwards. It wasn't like, oh, the show's over and like now it's sad, or what do I have to work towards?
It was like your whole world came to the surface.
Like now I'm not at the gym for 3 hours a day. Like I have to actually talk to my husband about what we're feeling. And I actually have to deal with like my career. You're not in robot mode anymore.
Do you think that had you not gone through all of that same stuff would have surfaced, or do you think it would have been?
When I started, like when I hit my like, okay, I'm going to stop drinking day at the beginning of 2023, for me, I had two thoughts in my head was I either keep doing what I'm doing, which got me to the weight that I was at, and I either keep getting fatter or you die. That's extreme. But like when you struggle with like think you have control over it. And for me too, COVID was hard because I worked remotely 90%, like most of those years. And so you could sit at home, you can drink and
I think a
all
lot
these
of people
things.
became alcoholics through COVID.
Yeah,
Even me, because I was out of work for 6 weeks. I was like, what am I gonna do? Oh, it's 3 o'clock. I think I can crack a beer.
yeah. And it just like it spirals out of control slowly and slowly. And so when I was at the point that I was at that point, I was like, I can't do what I'm doing and function. It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like the light that like I had to be like, I either like keep getting fatter and more unhealthy and I'll be a shitty mom and like a shitty wife and all these things, or like I can fix it. And I think in the beginning, I was hoping that I could force my husband to change certain things about like his behavior too.
Yeah.
But then I realized through that process that I only have control over me. And if I did it because I wanted in a result of for him to change something, then that's not realistic.
Yeah.
So I think we both really learned a lot through the entire experience, and things have changed a lot since then. And he had to go through a lot of his like rock bottom towards the end too. So we've now for the first time finally hit a spot together where we're working on our sobriety at the same time, which we've like never really done. Either like I was like, I don't want to drink, and he did. And then he would be like, I don't want to drink anymore, but I did. And so when you're doing these toxic behaviors, or like I would be thriving in my career and he'd be laid off.
Yeah.
Or I would be hating my career and he would be doing great. Like we always had this like roller coaster effect. So we've learned through the process of okay, something has to give here. And we've done like therapy and doing like things like that. But like essentially to answer your question was when I came out of it was like, okay, that was fun, but like now real life is still here.
I mean, I think it's really easy to do. There's been a few times in my life where I thought I was working through the emotions. I thought I was like feeling all the feels and doing all the things. And then when you actually hit that point, it was like, fuck, I've been suppressing that the entire time. I'm not actually feeling the feels and working on it. I've just been ignoring it.
Yeah.
And I think going through what you went through with prep, it was probably very easy because you had so much going on and your focus was on that alone, that it was a lot easier to ignore a lot of the
I
other
didn't have time
things.
to you almost have to like emotionally shut down. Like to mentally like push through it. There's no okay, go do your cry, but like it is what it is. Like get up. And that's the mental part that like really like I did grow mentally in that state was like it didn't matter if I was tired. It didn't matter if it was cold outside. It didn't matter. Like my alarm went off at 5 a.m. It was pitch black. I got up in the dark all by myself, did my pre-workout, had my protein shake, had my supplements, went to the gym and put my head down and did the work. And I would even talk myself through things like I'd feel like shit one day. Some days you have lists where you're like, this is amazing. Other days you're like, I couldn't even pick up like a 10-pound dumbbell. And towards the end, you're so depleted that like I remember toward like in the middle part of prep, I was my like hip thrusting over 300 pounds.
Oh wow.
On that machine, I'd put 345-pound weights on it and I'd feel like a total badass. And then like towards the end, you lose strength. Everybody, you have to when you do prep, like you just can't, like you don't have food, you don't, and so it's just like this mind fuck too. But I would go in leg day sometimes and be like, maybe I'll just do 10 reps instead of 12. And then I'd yell at myself, no, bitch, you will do 2 more.
But
when you have that goal, like you don't want to like not be stage ready. And so like on a normal day, you could be like, okay, I feel like shit today, or I'm sick, or whatever. And then just do 10. But when the stakes are so high, I'm like, no, every rep you don't do, they say that, right? Like every rep you don't do, every day that you skip in the gym, you're giving your competition more to beat you because they did go to the gym that day and they did do the extra rep, right? So you're making it easier for everybody else to beat you or to look better than you.
That's one way to motivate you.
And it's true. So I don't know, but it was nice too when I was going to the gym because I'd see the same people at like 5:30 a.m. every day.
See a little bit of that community.
I had to immerse myself in that group of people. The only people I really talked to and confided in towards the end were people who were part of my coaching group or people at the gym because it's so isolating that you can only talk to people who literally understand. what you're doing and what
Right.
you're going through.
So a recurring theme I'm seeing in these interviews I'm doing is talking about if you could go back.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, this is something, it's a little bit different because you chose to do this and it was not something that just happened to you or whatever.
Yeah.
But would you do it over again? So it's just interesting. It's become an interesting topic of would you do the same thing over again? Would you change it? And most people are saying no, because that journey has made them who they are today. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you like to speak to that a little bit?
I agree. I think for my first prep, I walked out of it being like, holy shit, this year was insane. Like, you would have told me at the beginning in January when I was 220 pounds that by fall I'd be 140 pounds and doing my first bikini competition that I've been wanting to do for years. I would have been like, that's hilarious. So I am like, I can't discount myself for what that looked like. So no, I wouldn't change that piece of it. But I will say if I do it again, there's definitely things that I would do differently, but I wouldn't have known.
And that's what I think a lot of these
in it.
experiences you don't know, and you don't know how to deal with some of the situations. And we're all just learning on this life journey that we're living, regardless of the circumstances. But it's just been an interesting recurring theme that I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just start asking everybody about it because we're all struggling with our shit. And then it's like when you look back on it, even for me, of course, I don't want to keep going through infertility or I don't want to do it again. But there's a lot of silver linings that have come out of it too. So it's just really interesting.
I think too, like there's a difference there in the sense of like things that you have control over and things that you don't have control over. And that's where I give grace to your situation because you don't really have a lot of control over your outcome. Where for what we're talking about for me, I can do it again if I want to. I can do it differently. I can control the outcome. There's certain circumstances where you can control the outcome and you're like, you could do it again, you could do it better. But you have people who have things with their bodies or trauma or they've lost people or like things that you can't undo in the world. And it's like, that's how you react to it, how you use it moving forward.
But at the same time, I don't discount this journey either because I think it was very full of a lot of great things too that were out of your control in a sense as well, like doing the self-discovery and then everything you learned from it and then everything you learned from it after the fact too. And so that's been your story. So now here we are today. And where are you at? Are you still trying to find a balance between all the things? You've talked a little bit about working on your marriage and sobriety and things like that, but like, how are you now emotionally, mentally, and physically and all that?
So I would say like after Christmas-ish, I definitely was really struggling with my mental health. I had a new job. It was like crazy hours. Me and my husband were working through things. He hit a rock bottom moment. Things were like spiraling out of control. I felt like I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't eating well. And so I've had to slowly just take time to climb out of that. And so at this point now, I feel like I'm slowly like getting control over it. I had to figure out what worked for me. I've been doing at-home workouts. I haven't really been going back to the gym just because I don't know why. I had this like PTSD thing about it in the beginning, but then as I started, you can't stay stage lean. But as you start to put weight back on, I had this like embarrassment of, oh, I'm gonna go back to the gym and see all those people, and I don't look the way I did then. So there's a little bit of a mental block there for me. But like right now, I'm starting almost from square one again. But in my marriage, we're finally on the same page. So we've started a sober journey together for the first time ever. And so that's focus number one for both of us. We're both like evaluating things as far as like our career goes and like how we feel like in that sense. There's a lot going on with our kids. I can't I can't be the best version of me if I'm not healthy.
Mm.
And
That's not just physical, that's mental,
emotional, yeah. And so I know that in the back of my mind, and now I know what I'm capable of. I've set a bar for myself that's okay. Maybe you slip back, maybe you, and we talk about it all the time where you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't worked out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I've had to mentally get back in it, but I'm in this space now where I like feel very encouraged about this year. I feel we've worked through a lot of things in our personal life and with our family that I can continue this journey. I don't have any plans to do another show, to do another prep. I would have to get into a mental strong place to do that. And I might hit that point at some point. Right now, that's not in the plans for me, but it's just finding that life balance. And so I've tried to be better about getting my food back in order. The 80-20 rule is what I try to follow. 80% healthy, and then you're not kicking yourself for if you do go out and eat.
And that's sustainable.
That's sustainable, but it's still mindful.
Yeah, you have to change your mindset around the food.
I've always said I'm either 150% committed to my fitness journey or I'm 150% committed to self-sabotage.
Jeez.
That's literally like that's how I've been all the time, which is why I like go up and down, up and down. But I think for me, the number one key is I have to maintain control over my sobriety. That takes everything from me. That makes me hungry. That makes me lazy. It takes my money. It makes me not a good employee. It makes me not a good mom. That was what started it all for me. And that's what's either going to keep me going or completely take me out. And that's just, I've recognized that for myself.
That's huge to recognize that of yourself. That's a big thing. And then to take this, and I think anybody listening who's been through addiction or sobriety or any of that stuff, like it's tough. It ain't an easy thing.
And you can't have a strong mindset with that. And that's what I learned is after my show, I started slowly drinking again and it was holidays. So quickly does it, all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, ugh, how did we get back?
Like, it's so easy. Our society normalizes alcohol so much too.
And honestly, just to self-disclose too, like my husband's been like sober curious or whatever, and everybody has to have that moment where you think that, okay, I've stopped drinking for a little bit and maybe I can have control. And I do believe everybody has to have moments of testing the waters. And I had to do that too. I was sober for 100 days and I was so scared to have a drink. I did end up having a drink after that, but I also did prep after that. And I was able to maintain it and have a lot of control. But people have to figure that out for themselves. And we just finally hit a place together where we're like, it doesn't serve us. And maybe neither of us really have a lot of self-control. Like if you talk about how we fight and it's not to say that someone has like a severe problem. Like we're both functioning people. We work and we're parents and whatever, but like there's so many things you would do differently if alcohol was removed from the situation. And I think we both finally hit a spot where we realize it's not serving us. And so that's been like main focus number one. And now it's just like, how can we go to the gym together? But I'm very like lifestyle focused now. Like, how do I get control over, or if I am drinking, or the food piece of it for me, like, why am I eating these things? Why am I doing these things? And sometimes there's not an easy answer about why people like emotionally eat or binge eat or crave certain things, but it's something I have to be like conscious of. So that's just the goal now is, okay, I lost weight. How do I maintain it to a reasonable, standpoint?
Sure.
Not like
not the, which is like the other end of it.
And keep going to the gym because mentally, I do love going to the gym. I love working out. That's my place. But in reality, because I work full time and because I have 2 kids, I have to get my ass up and go in the morning and get my workout done.
And us Welch girls have never been morning people.
But that also wasn't hard for me when I was eating clean, when I was like, it wasn't hard for me during prep. It was just part of my lifestyle. And so it's just like getting back into that. You can make anything work if you make it a priority. So I'm working on that because I did take that break where I was just burnt out. And now
fair, I think after learning everything you've gone through.
So now it's just like, okay, how do you do it? And my kids, when I took a break for a while after my show, I remember Landon said we went to lunch and he was like, are you ever gonna go to the gym again?
Oh no,
like,
really?
Well, they know. He would know if I like missed a day, he'd be like, Mom, did you go to the gym today? Like my kids were all in.
You don't even need a coach.
No.
You just
He'd be like, are you supposed to eat that?
Oh,
He
really?
knew, not in a mean way, but they knew that I was like strict. They knew my regimen, and Kyla would come out, sit in the garage with me while I was doing my cardio.
Yeah.
Like they were used to it. It was like their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I would like maybe sneak like a bite of mac and cheese or something, and Lena would be like, I saw you, and I'm like, don't tell.
So
They see too, like they're watching.
Yeah.
And so it's like setting that example and just making like health and fitness also just like a part of the family.
Yeah.
Because our family didn't really do that. So to, incorporate, like, my daughter loves broccoli.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I didn't love broccoli when I was a kid. They see when you make those changes, which is important too. So just more like finding a sustainable like lifestyle that's not so extreme is the focus for now.
Nice. We should probably do a little wrap up, but one last question. What advice would you give to somebody? Obviously, nobody's going to walk your exact journey, but after going through everything you've gone through, not just the prep and the show and stuff, what have you learned and what would you tell others?
I guess for me personally, I've always been a very motivated person. And that's just like, at the end of the day, you can do anything that you want to do, but you have to put the work in. Anybody can do anything. I truly believe that, but you have to work your ass off for it. Nothing comes easy, and there's excuses for everything. Yeah. Discipline is huge. And if you can conquer self-discipline and mental discipline, like there's nothing that can stop you in any aspect of your life. And it takes a lot of work, and it's consistency too. Yeah. It's going and doing the things that you don't want to do when you don't want to do them, right? It's when it's cold outside, when you're sick, when you don't feel like it, when you can conquer those things, there's no excuse. And I hear excuses from people all the time, but I had to put myself in a place where it just is what it is, and you figure it out and you make it work, and you figure out how to go to the gym for 3 hours a day, and you figure out how to work a full-time job, and you figure out how to be a parent. You can do hard things, but you have to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you. Don't play victim.
And maybe do it for yourself.
You have full control, right? And that's the thing too, is I'm like people weren't supportive. Like it doesn't matter. You're gonna lose friends. You're gonna lose things. Like you have to do it for you. Take responsibility. Don't play victim, and put the work in, and you'll make it work. Otherwise, it won't. And what do they say? Nothing changes if nothing changes. That's what I learned. Is I did something I never thought I could actually do in a very extreme way and pretty quickly. And it was literally because of discipline, hard work, and consistency. And everybody in the world says it, but it's true. So until you can conquer that, then it just is what it is.
Oh, that's good. That was good. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. And thank you for being vulnerable, because that's not always easy to talk about your feelings and hard shit. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. And everyone out there, thanks for listening. I'm sure Teagan will be back on again. Sometime we'll have something else to talk about, I'm sure. So thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the stories shared, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews make a huge difference. They help us reach more listeners and continue bringing you engaging, insightful content. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Until next time, keep listening, growing, and sharing.